They don't know what is what.
Hmm.
So, if any of you, have thought of how I have tortured you, just think of today as payback. I think we can get going. We should get going.
Yes.
Yeah, please attend the classes in the evenings because I think they'll suddenly announce that there'll be some exam or something. So, given that, I just want to use the evening classes also to try and finish off as much of the syllabus as possible. So, because I realize that we're still in unit number one as far as political ideologies is concerned. So, we need to move a bit there. So, we'll do that in the evening classes. Uh, okay. Okay or not, that is what I'm going to do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We'll put a message in our group that evening classes are for a paper only and not kind of extra things.
Yeah.
Then people will attend.
Yes, please put it as political ideologies.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. The other day we had started talking about Roman civilization after I had given you a summation of the various Greek periods and then how the Hellenistic period in ancient Greece was something that went into a decline. That shows that the Greek period went into decline. And when the Greek period went into decline, it was the rise of the Romans that took place. Now, what we need to understand is that when we are talking about the Romans, when we are talking about the Roman civilization, the Roman civilization essentially began as res publica or public, depends some people. I don't know which of these is accurate, but I do know that both have been uh, used. Uh, so res publica or res public, which in English got gets translated into republic. But as I keep emphasizing, the ancient republics are the ancient republics anywhere in the world are totally different from the modern republics that are based in the nation state. So this is a point that you need to keep in mind. Okay, and this is especially true of uh, Rome, because uh, you will understand when we actually start doing uh, republics in the modern period, and when we contrast that with what happened in ancient Rome, you will find that there is a sea of difference between uh, what happened in the ancient period and what happened in the modern period. Now, if you look at this whole thing, you will also have to take note of one particular point. The point that you have to take note of is that uh, the Roman Republic, the ancient Roman Republic, was ruled by a triumvirate, which consisted of the king, perhaps. There doesn't seem to be a better translation for the person. You can't call him a chieftain because too big for that. Then you had the Senate that consisted of prominent citizens, that consisted of prominent citizens. Uh, Actually, the word for that in Latin is sive. Okay, and that is the root of citizens, which is a modern translation. But otherwise, if you look at this whole idea of sive, it is people who had a certain kind of civic standing in society. The other day, I explained what is civic in a fair amount of detail. So I hope you remember that, and I'm not going to go and touch that point again right now. Don't want to do the same things over and over again. So they were called Seaway, uh, but it is with the rise of the modern city states that we find first in Italy and also in places like Geneva. There we find that the city state has been used. But again, that is a problem of translation, because what we saw of even the modern Italian city states, as they have been called, are technically principalities. They are not city states, they are principalities, as is the Geneva is possibly an an exception. So, but we'll talk about Geneva when we come to Rousseau. Uh, But please remember that citizen is an English uh, approximation to this whole thing called cive that we find in Latin. And it is, funnily enough, uh, the politike, okay, is the word in Greek that was used to to distinguish between those who had the thing to rule and those who didn't become a part of the ruling as such. So please remember that distinction. So the key expression that you need to remember is Kinonia Politicae. Kinonia Politicae, only those are the people who were fit to rule as far as ancient Greece was concerned. And here it is the members of the uh, Societas Civilis, who were called the Cive, and these were the people who were considered to be uh, capable of being a part of the Senate, which had as much power as the king. And then there were the magistrates. Is that the spelling of magistrates?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. It wasn't seeming very right to me. Uh, please don't mind. I've been loaded with painkillers and tranquilizers, so I'm a bit dull today. So kindly excuse me. Uh, yeah, so magistrates. Now, the magistrates here should not be understood in the way in which we understand judges. Okay, we don't understand them as judges uh, as we have them in the modern period. We don't have mm, uh, magistrates who are like judges. These were again the prominent citizens. So let me not. These were people who were considered to be those who. Please remember, this is not. These are not the days of uh, the. These are not the days of written uh, laws. Uh, you will find that these people, these magistrates, uh, it's it's just a very, very superficial comparison, so don't take it too deep. It is like how the Samiti was created with the chieftain and four people. The four people who constituted the Samiti were considered to be the four people who constituted the committee along with the chieftain were considered to be elderly and wise. So, what we have here is exactly the same thing, uh, where in fact, um, if you look at the usage, even in our modern parlance, I'll not go anywhere other than India. Okay, when we talk about um, the Rajya Sabha, uh, we call the members of the Rajya Sabha as elders. I'm sure you have heard of this particular usage, and this usage is to let people know that these are supposedly wiser people. Uh, that was in principle. That was in principle what people wanted the Rajya Sabha to be, wise people, and that is why you have those nominated seats. But anyway, in the absence of the second house of their, well, you can't call it a parliament. At that time, there was no parliament. So there was, in the absence of, uh, a second house, uh, the Senate was the sole representative body as far as prominent citizens were concerned. And then you have the magistrates. Now, you must understand here that the magistrate is significantly different from a judge. That's a point that I'm trying to make. Because today, the judge does not enact laws. The judges do not enact laws. They only interpret laws. And if there is judicial review, they will even consider the acts or laws passed by the state to be constitutional or not. The Romans, like I told you, didn't have a written constitution, and therefore it was very much up to the magistrates to even enact laws. So, laws were not enacted by the Senate, they were not enacted by the king, they were enacted by the magistrates. And you might find this a bit of a shocker that in the United States of America, the judges of various courts, including the Supreme Courts of the states, and especially the Supreme Courts of the states and the Supreme Court of the United States of America, these people could actually create a law while looking at the Constitution. There is judicial review in America. While looking at the Constitution, the judges were given the powers to interpret that law and, if necessary, uh, create a new interpretation of that law which didn't exist before. And that is why you have this word precedent, Precedent. The word precedent comes into being because the judges in America were empowered to interpret laws, and in doing so, give an entirely new dimension to a law which didn't, a new dimension which didn't exist before to an existing law, and therefore change the nature of the law. So that is what you will find in the various Supreme Courts of the United States of America. And I have told you again and again that the United States of America looked at Rome, and I have been into the Senate and into the House of Representatives, uh, as well as the judicial body. They're all located in one place, the capital, and they write the capital with an OL. I don't know why. Uh, so uh, for many years, I thought it was Capitol, but then I realized it's not. It's capital. And uh, what I found is there are inscriptions, especially in the Senate, not so much in the lower house of the parliament, written with uh, the kind of Latin script that the Romans used. Like, if you look at the Latin alphabet of the Romans, uh, the U was written as V. It looks like a V. So when it says public, it's PVBLIC, but it's actually U. It's actually U. And that is the reason why somebody asked me the other day, not in the class, uh, an old student who had called up to find out if I was still alive or dead. And he said, so you think so much of yourself. Can you explain to me why is it that we write uh, W as double V, but call it W? So I said, very, very sorry to disappoint you. I actually have an answer for that. The answer is this, okay, that they write U like a V. And that's how, when they wrote a W, that particular word got added on later, and the W letter, I'm sorry, very, very sorry, that letter got added on later, and even though it is pronounced W, it is written like a double V, And by the way, the sound of W is oo. Okay, phonetically speaking, the sound of W is oo, which is would be. We don't say would be. We don't put our upper teeth on the lower lip like we would when we say va, va, v. That's when. So, and so please remember that that is the reason why when you are reading or translating anything from Sanskrit into English using a transliterating, I'm sorry, uh, there is no W sound in Sanskrit. Very few, very few uh, Indian languages have the W sound. So it's all a va, Veda, and all those things have to be written with a V. Anything that has a va sound in Sanskrit, when transliterating, has to be written with a V, never with a W. Anyway, sorry for the digression. Uh, so these were people who were considered to be capable of understanding ethical principles in their entirety, and because of that, they were made magistrates. They became magistrates purely based on their wisdom, purely on based on their wisdom and their ability to distinguish between uh, to distinguish between what was not ethical and what was ethical. And please remember, even in the Roman Empire, we are still not saying that the ethical is different from the moral. So, even during the Roman period, we use them as interchangeable terms, morals and ethics. Ethics is something which is derived more out of Greek language. Moral seems to be derived more out of the Latin language. And uh, anyway, so let's get on with it. So this was the structure, the triumvirate. So if the king wanted to wage a war, he needed the permission of the Senate. He had no right to go and wage a war all on his own. If he wanted to increase taxes, whatever purposes, he had to. The Romans did have a system of taxation, okay, not corresponding to our system of taxation, but they did have some kind of taxation, and this was done only the king could propose it, but it would only be done by uh, somebody if the Senate passed it with a majority. If they did not pass it with a majority, then the tax could not be imposed. So that's why it's called a triumvirate. Funny as this might seem, funny as this might seem, it's not just the USA which followed this triumvirate. Okay, the USA followed the triumvirate that I have explained many times to you. But even the USSR, the erstwhile USSR, which is a union of Soviet Socialist republics, which was a reality in my childhood, in my early adulthood, and uh, and suddenly disappeared. They also, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, had a triumvirate. They had the president of the country, they had the prime minister of the country, and they had a separate general secretary of the uh, Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So that was a triumvirate that existed there until, of course, Stalin became a dictator, and later on, Nikita Khrushchev actually restored the triumvirate. But you'll see that Leonid Brezhnev again uh, didn't allow the triumvirate to flourish. He became president and general secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. So, what you find there is a violation of it. Gorbachev restored it after Brezhnev, and then that led to the fall of the of the Soviet Union. Anyway, now why are we studying the Roman Empire? Because if you look at your, if you look at your, I'm very sorry. If you look at your syllabus, if you look at your syllabus, there's no mention of the Roman Empire. So why talk about it? Okay. The next topic goes to church-state controversy, which I told you is bad language. It should be imperium, actually sacerdotium imperium. Oh, sacerdotium imperium. What should I call it? Uh, Controversy. Yeah. So if you want to understand that, then understanding all these developments will become an absolute necessity, unavoidable necessity. So let us quickly go through the Romans once.
Sir,
Yeah,
what was the time period when the Roman Empire began, and when did this triumvirate come into existence?
the triumvirate existed at the time of roughly around the same time as um, the what should we say, the Hellenistic period of Greece, which will be around 3rd century BCE, I think. That is the time
Okay,
period. And after that, Julius Caesar changed the whole thing, which is what I'll be coming to right now.
okay.
Yeah. things changed with is that the spelling? Yeah, I think it is. I guess it is. Things changed with Julius Caesar, and as I have told you before, that Caesar was his name. It was not a title. Caesar was his name. And later on, because he was such an imposing figure in the Roman Empire, the later emperors also decided that they'll call themselves Caesars. And I told you that became Tsar with the Russians and Kaiser, Kaiser, with the German, not German, Prussian, okay, the Prussian Empire called them Kaisers. Uh, the Prussian Empire, of course, is not different, not very different from the Roman Empire, sorry, from the Germans. The Prussians were nothing but Germans and Austrians, and all of them spoke the same language. So the Prussians used that thing of Kaiser. Anyway, things changed with Julius Caesar, who he became a conqueror, so he became an emperor. With that, the triumvirate vanished. With Julius Caesar, the triumvirate completely vanished, and you have the beginning of this great, mighty empire whose praises Gibbons can't stop singing. He just can't stop singing praises of the Roman Empire. For him, nothing came close to the Roman Empire. Anyway, so if you can get a hand on a copy of that book by Gibbons, uh, please read it. It's interesting for its lack of factuality and unashamed admiration of the Roman Empire, where it need not have been admired at all. Anyway, so with the conquering, with the conquering of various different territories, the Roman Empire spread throughout the western. Okay, so that is how it spread. Uh, and since it became Constantinople, named after Emperor Constantine. Today, people pronounce that name as Constantine, but please remember that the Romans didn't pronounce names as uh, "een," they pronounced it as "ein." So it was Constantine. You don't say Valentine's Day, right? It's Valentine's Day. So this is the Americans unnecessarily interfering with pronunciations. It's not Constantine, it is Constantine, Emperor Constantine. It is named after him, Constantinople. And they had various offices like the tribunes, the prelates. I'm not going to give you the structure of the Roman Empire now. That'll take us significantly away from what we have to do. So the Roman Empire was very big, and it became so big that there was an internal revolt against Julius Caesar. Okay, but I'll just write Pompey because otherwise it will disappear. Pompey was somebody who was actually he was somebody uh, sorry he was somebody who was a general, a powerful one at that, and I'm extremely sorry about that. So Pompey had to be fought by Julius Caesar. In fact, that is one of the reasons why they decided that it will have a capital in the eastern part, and the wars between Julius Caesar and Pompey were fought in Africa, in the territories that I have identified. They were fought there, and basically, in order to control further revolutions from within the armed forces of the, the Roman Empire, you will find that the Eastern Roman Empire uh, became a separate kind of a thing. Sorry. Oh my God. Yeah. So they created that as a, what should I say? They created that in order to prevent further such uprisings. And so there were prelates, there were provosts, and very funnily, these are used in universities, not just in the US, but also in India. Okay, there is an office of a provost, there's an office of a prelate. Uh, we don't have the office of a tribune, but we do talk about tribunals, which instead of having one tribune, you have three people sitting in a tribunal. Uh, so that is what we find in uh, the Roman Empire after we see what Pompey tried to do. And I told you that the Roman Empire uh, decided to use certain um, territories as their protectorates if the people of that particular territory did not offer resistance to the Romans. Now, one such territory was Judea and Samaria. Okay, mainly Judea, a bit of Samaria as well. And this particular protectorate was fine. The Jewish people accepted the Romans, but what we see is Jesus of Nazareth. Now, forget all the stories of immaculate conception by Mary. She was a virgin and gave birth to Julius Caesar. because she was divinely impregnated. Those are all, in my considered opinion, cock and bull stories, just as we have our own share of cock and bull stories that are, what should I say? Sorry, that are the creation of later generations, like Kunti, for example, um, was supposed to have had immaculate childbirth of Karna with the sun god, then Yudhishthira with Yama, and then Bhima with Vayu, and Arjuna with Indra. So those are her sons. The sons of Madri, the second wife of Pandu. I don't know. I used to know, but I have forgotten. But they are, I think, uh, they are considered to be children of yakshas. But I'm not sure. Don't take my word for it. I'll have to check that again. So the thing that you need to realize is put aside all those stories. Jesus was a normal human being like you and me. But unlike you and me, he was a great man. And Hegel is right in calling him a great man. Initially the legend of Christ began as the Son of God. Now, in many churches have actually elevated him to the Son of God. And funnily enough, Christianity also has a triumvirate. The triumvirate of Christianity is one, God; two, the Son of God, who's Jesus; and three, the Holy Ghost. Now, this I didn't understand. And because of their American fear of ghosts, they have made it the Holy Spirit. Okay. Um, but it's otherwise the correct translation for that is the Holy Ghost. Okay. The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost is the Trinity that you find in Christianity. But that's not very important right now. Now, before actually, sorry, in my pain, I didn't realize that this is not the time to talk about Jesus Christ. Okay, the Romans did not have great philosophers, but they had people like Cicero, and Seneca, who were uh, actively involved with jurisprudence, which was probably the first major attempt in the Western world to codify laws. Now, the Romans, I told you that while doing Aristotle, I, I told you that the idea that he took slaves is rubbish. It is complete that the conquered people were taken as slaves. That's not true in the case of Aristotle, but that's very, very true in the case of the Romans. The Romans considered themselves to be superior to all other uh, people, peoples. So Roman jurisprudence was about laws applicable to the Romans and laws applicable to non Romans. And the Romans shared a pantheon of gods similar to the Greeks, except they didn't have Zeus. Their biggest god was Apollo, similar to the Greeks. The Romans depicted gods as warlike. The Roman gods were warlike. This is a significant point, and I'll raise this again when we do Machiavelli. The belligerent and believed in war. That is what you will see with the Romans. Oh God. Um, yeah, the, the Romans, because of their conquering of territories, created a civilization which is called, no, I don't know what to do. Um, I'll put it here from this place to under this. It was called the Universal Pragmatic Civilization, or I'll just put this as UPC for me to type it so that we'll have space to type these things. We, when I say Universal Pragmatic Civilization, I'll be typing it as UPC. Please remember that. Please remember that. Now, what are the characteristics of the universal pragmatic civilization? It unified huge territories and brought them under the Roman rule, but never unified the people in these territories. Okay, what am I saying? It did not unify people in these territories. This is because of the Romans believing that they were superior and that they had conquered these people, took them as slaves, So, where is the unity among people? So, you have a Roman Empire that consisted of only a few people who were Romans and were also the seaway or the citizens, the people who were conquered were made slaves. Those who were made not made slaves, they were made into servants or serfs, if you like. And old and the sick were massacred because they said, what is the point of having these people? So the Roman Empire existed as a territory. To make you understand this a bit better, let me give you the example of India. When Gandhi unified Indians politically, the unification, the political unification of India as one large territory was carried out by the British, but they ruled as foreigners. Please remember that. They didn't rule as Indians. Now, that is the striking difference between the Muslims and the Muslim uh, kings and and what do we say? Uh, mm, the British rulers. We have two kinds of Muslims who invaded India. One were those which were only interested in plundering India. So, in this, you will put people like Nadir Shah, you will put people like Muhammad Ghazni, who, for some strange reason, inspired that Tamil film, and Ghazni was pronounced as Ghajini, and Amir Khan, being this wonderful stupid idiot, used the same title in Hindi, Ghajini. Muhammad Ghazni was called Ghazni because he came from the province of Ghazni. Okay, and Nadir Shah, of course, came from Persia, and Muhammad Ghazni also came from Sim.
Muhammad Ghori.
No, Ghazni. I'm talking about Ghazni. Ghazni came before Gauri. Ghazni was relentless. He got defeated 17 times. Okay, Muhammad Ghazni was defeated 17 times in his attempts to loot India, and he ultimately took something very small and went away. He didn't succeed. So, learning from his experience, Muhammad Ghauri or Muhammad of Ghauri, which is only written now as Muhammad Ghauri, he created an army of mercenaries whom he treated as slaves later on. And he invaded India, looted India as much as he could, and then decided that the slaves were not serving any purpose now that he had finished looting. And if he took the slaves back, there were two problems that he was having. One problem that he was having was that you have to take care of them, you have to feed them, you have to give them horses. So, all those things meant expenditure. And because these mercenary soldiers uh, actually played a very, very important role in Gauri uh, conquering India, he thought that they'll ask him for a share in the spoils that he was taking away with him. So he left the slaves behind and made off without letting them know that he was going. So the slaves were stuck here and they decided that there's no point in leaving the country. So they established the Delhi Sultanate, or if you want it in Persian, Arabic, Urdu, it is Delhi Sultanate. Delhi Sultanate is what it is. So, what do you find then? You find that uh, Muhammad Ghauri left behind this band of highly trained mercenaries, and so these people decided, let's stay here and rule. And that's how the Delhi Sultanate or the Sultanate came into being. So Qutbuddin Aibak was one of the earliest slave dynasty. See, they didn't call themselves the slave dynasty. Uh, that was something that historians have bestowed upon them. They didn't call themselves any dynasty, they didn't give themselves a name. So later historians just called them the slave dynasty. And then you have the Khaljis, Khiljis, it's up to you. They were also slaves. And Alauddin Khalji, Khalji or Khilgi. So Alauddin Khalji was the person who was the next after Qutbuddin Aibak, and the slave dynasty's sultanate was not such a powerful sultanate. It was not something that was going to go around conquering a lot of territories. They did conquer territories, and but they were not big. The real this thing came in the form of Babur. I don't want to tell you the story of Babur. Babur was forced out of Persia for various reasons. For some time, he tried to occupy what is what was called Samarkand, Samarkhand, Samarkand, but he didn't really succeed. Samarkand was near the Hindu Kush mountains. And so, what does Babur decide? Babur decides, let me also go to India. So, all these people came through the Khyber Pass, and Babur brought with him an army that was capable of unseating the slave dynasty from the Delhi Sultanate. So, Babur basically came here and settled down because he had nowhere else to go. He had nowhere else to go. And then he continued to conquer and built a substantial territory. But the real architect of the Mughal emperors, from among the Mughal emperors, the real architect was Akbar. Akbar was able to unify greater uh, territories into the Mughal Empire without without basically waging too many wars. That is because Akbar did gerrymandering, Gerrymanding. Have I used this word before? Has anyone?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Uh, so the word comes out of, there's an island adjacent to somewhere near New York, I think, east coast of America, which was actually shaped like a salamander. And that island was, now it's not called that, but at one time it was called the Salamanderite, what do you say, island. And the governor of that uh, particular island was actually called Jerry. I can't remember his name now, second name. His first name was Jerry, written not Jerry, but written Gerry. Okay, uh, it's like Jerome. Jerome was not, there was no name like Jerome. Jerome is the old spelling for Jeremy, Jerome, Jeremy. Uh, so uh, they changed the spelling, so that became Jerome. and therefore the Jews took that name up, Jerome. So spellings have changed. I told you even Jeffrey, the original spelling is Geoffrey, Jeffrey, but now people write Jeffrey. Jeff also is written like that. So Jerry, I'll try to find his name. I mean full name. Jerry, whatever surname, was a very cunning man, and he used to co-opt opposition into himself. He used to give them something, make them happy, give them a position, and thereby, without fighting, he would co-opt them into his own ranks. Now, Hinduism has also been accused of gerrymandering. Okay, people say that Shiva worship predated the coming of the Aryans, and the Nagas were different, but all of them, through a process of gerrymandering, were brought under the fold of Sanatana Dharma. That is where the Triumvirate was also created, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. But that's a digression. So gerrymandering is incorporating those who are an opposition to you, you incorporate them into your own system. So that's why Buddhism, what following does it have in India? It has a huge following outside of India because Buddhism was again gerrymandered and co opted into Hinduism. Jainism has become a part of Hinduism. Okay, so if you look at it that way, gerrymandering was done by the Aryans, the original Sanatana Dharma followers, and we find that being done by Akbar. Akbar was a diplomat par excellence. He got his main enemies, the Rajputs, into the what should we say, into his royal court. He made Raja Mansingh, I think, he made him the general of his army, and he made Raja Mans Jai Singh uh, one of the uh, ministers in his court. So I don't know if it is Man Singh who was in the court and Jai Singh who was the general. I'm slightly confused today. Like I said, I'm on a heavy dose of tranquilizers for 2 days and painkillers, and that too tramadol that acts on the brain. So, uh, so forgive me, but just I'll check that. Was Jai Singh the general or Man Singh? But both were there in with Akbar. Then he married a lot of Hindu women, gave them rights. That is a more important thing. So he was a diplomat, tremendous diplomat. So what do you see? The Muslim rulers, they settled down here, didn't trouble the original population. They knew they were a minority, and they knew that if they troubled the local population too much, then they'll get into trouble. They'll have to fight wars. And so they didn't want to fight wars except Aurangzeb, who is an exception. But otherwise, most of the Mughal emperors were quite uh, what should I say, tolerant. They even rewarded Hindus with great positions. So you see, there was no erosion of the Hindu culture. And if you read, what is his name? Ziauddin Barni, who was an Islamic thinker in India, he found fault with the Muslim kings. He said these people are using so many of uh, what should we say? They are using so many of the Hindus. They are rewarding them at the expense of the Muslims. So he advocated the slaughtering of Hindus, Ziauddin Barni. Okay, but Akbar was astute. He knew that the Muslims were not in such big numbers that they could go and conquer the whole of India. So he did it through diplomacy. And that is a very important thing to remember. And that's how they localized. And that's how the cross pollination of cultures happened. But the British didn't do that. They unified the territory. They unified the territory, but they were not able to unify the people in the territory. Okay? And it was only Dadabhai Nauroji, when he was prevented from contesting for elections to the House of Commons, uh, Dadabhai Nauroji fought back saying, if you say we are a part of the British Empire, if we are if the head of India is the crown of Britain, then I am a British citizen and I will contest an election. Matter went to court. Nauroji won the case. Nauroji also won an election and represented the case of Hindus. This is again, not Hindus, sorry, Indians. This is again portrayed as betrayal by Nauroji. It is not. It is not at all. The only thing, single point agenda that Nauroji had was to represent India, bring the problems to the notice of the government. And there are a lot of stories I can tell you about Nauroji. If you're interested, sometime I'll tell you those stories. But he's a great patriot, no doubt about that. He wasn't somebody who sold himself to the British, which is what many people write rubbish. Uh, anyway, so the British didn't unite people here, which is exactly the same mistake the Romans made. They did not unite people. When you do not unite people, then you don't get their loyalty, their allegiance to your rule. There was loyalty to Akbar's rule. There was loyalty to Humayun's rule. There was loyalty to uh, Jahangir's rule. There was no loyalty to Aurangzeb's rule, though, because he was a bigot. But there was again loyalty when Bahadur Shah Zafar 1, 2, all of them came. People didn't mind. They were benevolent. So you see, even today, the population of Muslims in this country is some 14 or 16%, I think. So in those days, it would have been even smaller. So how would they have conquered so many people? They couldn't have. And so they did this. Aurangzeb was a bigot and an idiot. Bigots are idiots. So that led to his downfall. Anyway, so the failure of the Roman Empire was that while it created a universal uh, pragmatic civilization, which is unification of vast territories, but the people remained alienated from the Romans. And this is our beginning point to understand the rise of Christianity. What I want you to remember, and this is what I'll do tomorrow, what I want you to remember is that uh, Christianity actually piggybacked on the Roman civilization. That's how Christendom became so powerful, so powerful. So I'll stop here today. I was being very optimistic last night, and I put a link for the evening class. I can actually talk to you for some more time because Madam Yasmin is not taking your class. Just let me explain what I want to do. Uh, I had, I was hoping that I could, what should I say? I was hoping that I could take a class this evening. That seems to be a difficult or an impossible task. I'm already in a great deal of pain, and like I said, from 12:30 to 4:30, I have to sit and listen to God knows what. I don't know how these people are getting JRFs. They don't know anything about anything. They're getting JRFs. So I have to listen to them. I intend to be a passive spectator because anyway, no students will be allotted to me. Only people who everybody is sure will never complete their PhD in their life, they are allotted to me. I don't know what kick people get out of that. Let it be. Who cares? Who cares? I just wish I didn't have to go. But if I didn't go, if I don't go, I'm sorry. Then that'll raise a stick. And then we have a wonderful chief minister who wants all of us. I think he thinks COVID positive is a good thing, negative is a bad thing, and COVID positive is a good thing. So he's kind of trying to make as many people as possible COVID positive. So July 1st, my real travails will start with this terrible back problem and my comorbidities, of which I have several. I have several comorbidities, and therefore in God we trust. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions you can ask? Because like I said, there's no class after this. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay, I get the idea. You're just asking me to get lost. Yeah, why not? Okay. See you tomorrow then at 9 o'clock.
Thank you, sir. Take care, sir.
Yeah. There's no class in the evening, huh?
Thank you, sir. Yes.
But please circulate in the group that once I start classes in the evening, I am going to be teaching the syllabus of political ideologies.
Okay.
I'm going to be, so just put it in your class group. Okay, I'll be teaching the syllabus of political ideologies. I want to complete as much as possible. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.